Welcome to Music Theory Fluency. Today we'll be learning about modulations. But what does it mean to be fluent in music theory? It means we're not just going to learn a quick trick, or we're just going to memorize a bunch of vocab terms, but instead, we're going to take our time and understand these concepts using many different methods. Because the faster you learn something, the faster you forget it. Today we'll start by looking at a famous example of modulation in the Moonlight Sonata. Then we'll go through and look more generally at what are some of the very common ways that we would modulate in music. Then we'll go on and look at some of the common ways that we would modulate in our music. We'll look at a fun modulation that can take us to almost any key that we want to get to. Let's get started. Before we jump into Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, Opus 27, number 2, let's just go over briefly what is modulation. Modulation is when we've already established an existing key signature. Let's say C major that has the tonic C and a major tonality. And then we want to travel somewhere else. Let's say we want to go to the key of G major, so G is the tonic, and the F sharp is now heard as a normal note. But we're not going to be spending that long in the key of G major. So for as long as we stay in this tonic home bass, we'll just be using accidentals to represent the notes from the key. Now let's take a listen to the beginning of our Moonlight Sonata as it modulates from C sharp minor to E major. As I mentioned, Moonlight Sonata is in our key of C sharp minor. But where we end up is in our key of E major. The easy thing about this modulation is these two scales share the same key signature of both using the same 4 sharps. But we would still call this a modulation as we obviously went from a darker minor key resolving to the bright major key as the tonic home bass. So let's see how Beethoven achieved a very smooth modulation between these two keys. Where we begin in the key of C sharp minor, we begin on our 1 chord. Going through a different inversion, but the next measure we end up on our 5/7, just over the B sharp. So it's not as strong of a sound to the 5/7, but we do come back to the 1. But this is also our moment of modulation, as the C sharp minor would also be the 6th chord in the key of E major. And as we heard, we want to end somewhere major, so we're going to analyze the rest of these chords in the key of E major. Now in the key of E major, we would have our C sharp minor, 6, the F sharp minor, 2, our E over the B, the 1/6/4, which we would expect to go to the 5/7, and it does. The B7, our 5/7, in a perfect authentic cadence to the E major 1. And now a very smooth chord progression doesn't just say that it uses a common chord between the two, but that common chord is highly functional in both chord progressions. And my first 3 measures are the 1, 5, 6, 5 to 1. A nice simple tonic dominant back to the tonic. And now even better in our key of E major, we get our diatonic circle of fifths progression, where we're going through the letter names in the order of the circle of fifths, but only using the notes from the E major scale. So our C sharp minor, F sharp minor, skipping to the B7 to the E major. We would skip over the 1/6/4 because the 1/6/4 is really just an extension of the 5/7, and they get combined together into one dominant idea. And this is one of the things that Beethoven became famous for, was theoretically perfect
writing that led to seamless modulations.
If you're finding this useful, like and subscribe so you can keep finding more helpful music theory content. When modulating, two of the most common places we modulate to are to the dominant and to the subdominant, as these are the two neighboring key signatures of the key you're already in. Let's start by taking a look at our modulation to the subdominant, starting in the key of D major with 2 sharps, going to its subdominant G with 1 sharp.
Let's start with the demonstration in our key of D major. Let's start off by talking about the bass line. We'll notice our first 5 chords are all in the key of D major. And with my D, G, A, D, let's now talk about the scale degrees. 1, 4, 5, 5, 1. We call our scale degrees 1, 4, and 5 the primary tones, and the diatonic chords the primary chords, as they are the most crucial to leading toward a major sound being heard. And so we can notice one of the things that gives us such a D major sound is the fact that we are limiting ourselves to just using primary tones in our bass line. Now, if you went through a method book growing up, you will notice this right-hand chord progression as a very standard chord progression in the key of D major. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. D, G over D, D, A major over the C sharp, and D. But we do not analyze these based on the note in the bottom of the right hand, as our left hand is playing the bass tones. The only chord that we see look interesting is our 1, 6, 4. And this is what we saw earlier, right before the dominant 5 chord. It's an extension of the 5 chord that gives us a repetition of the dominant before we return to the tonic, and can aid in the voice leading back to our 5 chord. Now just the D major portion. And this portion right here we can consider to be an imperfect authentic cadence because my A is not the tonic in D major. If we wanted this to be a perfect authentic cadence here, we would need the D as the last note at the top of the melody. Can you hear the difference between how much resolution we feel on an imperfect versus perfect authentic cadence? Now we'll take a look at the second half in G major. One of the most important things to notice about G major is we have to go from 2 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, down to just 1 sharp, the F sharp. We'll notice every single accidental written is a C natural, as all these notes are now diatonic to our key of G major. Once again, let's just start by taking a look at our bass line. D, D, G, C, D, D, G. Now using the scale degree numbers. 5, 5, 1, 4, 5, 5, 1. And once again, we have only the primary tones in our key of G major, leading us to hearing this obvious G major sound right here. In our right hand, we'll notice a more unique voicing. I encourage people to play the top note and to hear the melody that is formed from these chord progressions. Noticing this will end on a G in the melody, so we will be ending on a perfect authentic cadence at the end here. But now how do we get there? We start by using our common chord, D major. The 1 chord in D major, but now the 5 chord in G major. We now go to the D7. And this is a chord that is diatonic to the key of G major with the C natural, but would not be to D major, making it obvious that our common chord had to be right before this. This 5-7 resolving to 1 could be classified as an imperfect authentic cadence, as we now have our B in the melody, creating a weaker sense of resolution, as we want to have our first resolution to G and then we'll take another resolution to G in a perfect authentic cadence later to really cement our ear into being in G major and getting out of D major. And now there's one interesting chord to note in here, as before our 1, 6, 4, 5, 7, rather than using the major 4 chord, we're using the minor 2 chord as we're coming from our C, B, and we want to get to our G, F sharp, G. If we used our 4 chord, the C major chord, getting from B to G, we would need an A, and we'll notice in our C major chord, we don't have any A inside this chord. So in order to harmonize this passing tone of A, we can use a lot of the same notes. Our A, and then the C and the E. We get our A minor, which in the key of G major is the 2 chord. But to keep the primary tones in the bass line, we put this over the C, so it is over the 3rd of the A minor for a 2-6. And if this starts to sound like absolute gibberish, check out this video over here, where we go into more of the theory of chord inversions and how we would do Roman numeral notation of inversions on triad and 5/7 chords. But now, let's just hear our G major in the right hand. D, D7, G major, A minor, G major, D7, G major. Once again with the Roman numerals, 5, 5, 7, 1, 2, 1, 5, 7, 1. And now putting it hands together. But our goal is not just to learn the version on the page here. The reason we talk so much about bass line and voice leading and melody is that when you're working on a piece, let's say in the key of E flat major, this is a fantastic exercise to transpose to the key of E flat major to become more familiar with the voicings and the modulations that you are more likely to deal with when playing a more substantial work in the key of E flat major. So let's do it. Let's take our key of E flat major, modulating to its subdominant 1, 2, 3, 4, the key of A flat major.
Now let's take a look at a modulation to the dominant. We'll start in the key of B major with 5 sharps, and we'll be modulating to the key of F sharp major with 6 sharps.
Let's start off with a demonstration first. We'll start by taking a look at what happens in the key of B major first, starting with our bass line. And once again, we notice B, E, F, F, B, B, with scale degrees, 1, 4, 5, 5, 1, 1. And this is why so often musicians are talking about scale degrees and Roman numerals rather than letter names and chord symbols. Because we talk about what letter names exist, each piece seems so different. But instead we talk about the functionality of what makes these pieces sound like they do, we start noticing so many things stay the same that it makes our music seem so much more simple to us, even when what's on the page can look intimidating at first. But we have our primary tones in the bass once again. And once again in my right hand, I start off exactly the same. This is the exact same voicing and exact same chord progression. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. Even though the letter names have changed, all the intervals have stayed the same, and even my hand shape and fingerings have stayed the same as well. We do add one more chord on at the end though, and this would be my G sharp minor. the 6 in the key of B major. This is still functional, as we call this a tonic prolongation, as both the 1 chord and the 6 chord are tonic functioning chords in the key of B major. If you want to learn more about tonic prolongation and chord functionality, check out this video here, where I go in full detail about chord function. But now, both of those are very simple. We can put it back hands together. Now we can go into looking at these last 4 chords in the key of F sharp major. Once again, let's start with our bass line. B, C, C, F, 4, 5, 5, 1. And once again, to make it sound like F sharp major, we are going to be playing the primary bass tones in the key of F sharp major. Now we can go into our right hand, and let's first just focus on this melody. It sounds very familiar because it's actually the same last 4 notes of the melody as the last thing we played. 2, 1, 7, 1. Or using solfege, re, do, ti, do. Now let's take a look at what chords are harmonizing this melody and bass line. We have our G sharp minor, F sharp major, C sharp major, and F sharp major, otherwise known as our minor 6, major 1, major 5, and a major 1. And all these chords are diatonic to our key of F sharp major, seeing as now the 1 added sharp is the E sharp, and the 1 accidental we see in here is the E sharp in our C sharp major chord. Now we look at the Roman numerals, and once again we see our 1, 6, 4 preceding a 5. This is the pattern we're talking about. It happens so much in our classical era music. They want to go to the 1, and they do, for a perfect authentic cadence with our F sharp in the melody. And once again, rather than a 4 chord being the predominant chord, we see our 2 chord being the predominant chord here as well, and that creates our common tone, whether it wants to go predominant into our dominant to tonic, or it wants to prolong our tonic resolution in the key of B major. This G sharp minor is functional for both chords. So let's hear our hands together, F sharp major at the end. Great, and now let's take this to an easy key. We'll transpose this to C major, everything natural, up to its dominant, G major, and like we saw earlier, G major has the 1 sharp, the F sharp. If you keep transposing these 2 exercises into whichever key you're currently working in, you will be surprised by how much progress you begin making in understanding what is happening in your music rather than just knowing what notes to play.
Now that we've gone over the most common modulations, let's do a fun one. And this is going to be a modulation featuring our diminished 7th chord. The great thing about the diminished 7th chord is, when you play it, there are at least 3 more spellings of the chord that all resolve to different places that use the same notes and are harmonically spelled. We'll be starting off in the key of G major, and then using the same fully diminished chord to modulate to a total of 8 different keys, both modulating to nearby keys, but also modulating to key signatures that are very far away on the circle of fifths that create a very interesting color in the harmony. Each of these will be in the key of G major, and we'll be using the same perfect authentic cadence to set them up. The next chord we'll be going to shares the two common tones of D and B, but now we're going to raise our G to a G sharp. Including the F, we would have our G sharp over the B right now. But the great thing about fully diminished chords is there are so many enharmonic spellings, and depending on the spelling, that tells us where we're going to go. We'll be taking our fully diminished chord to the dominant and then using the dominant to resolve back to a tonic. For this first one, we'll be taking it as a B fully diminished. So I have the B in the bass, my D, F, and A flat in the right hand, with my B resolving to the C, and that C resolving us to F major. With in each of these examples, we could very easily use this dominant to also resolve to the parallel minor. Now for the full exercise, where I'll first resolve to the major, and then I'll play the last three chords again as if it was the minor. Now taking this as a D fully diminished, my D is now in the bass, so we would spell this with F, A flat, and C flat. And this would resolve to our E flat, which resolves to our A flat major. For this next example, we'll be taking this as an E sharp fully diminished. With my E sharp in the bass, I would have my G sharp the third above, then my B, and my D. For this example, we'll be using our G sharp diminished, with the G sharp in the bass, our B, D, and F, the G sharp resolving to our A, and our A resolving to the D. Good girl. Everyone tell Nala she was such a good girl and she did not bark during that recording. If the construction and the spelling of the fully diminished chord are a bit confusing for you, I highly encourage checking out this video here where we go fully in depth into our fully diminished chords. And from just the key of G major, with just this one diminished chord, we can go to a total of 8 different tonal centers. This would be a third of the total tonal centers when you consider major and minor. Some that are close on the circle of fifths, like G to its dominant D, but also some that are very far away, like going from G to A flat major. Thank you for watching. If you got any questions or comments, make sure to leave them down below. I make sure to go through all the comments I receive on my videos to make sure to clear up any things that can be a little extra confusing. If you want to pick up your own copy of the Moonlight Sonata, check below in the description, as I have a link where you can purchase a copy of this music and support the channel in the process. If you're still watching here, make sure you're subscribed so you can keep finding this helpful theory content. If you're still watching here, make sure you're subscribed so you can keep finding more helpful music theory content. Happy practicing.